Algebra and expressions. So what is x? Well, x can be two things. Firstly, x can be an unknown value, which means that it just stands in for some unknown specific number. So example 1 is an example where x plus 3 equals 2. X is just some unknown number. It's just standing in for the number -1. It can also be what we call a variable, so a number that can change, a number that can take on many values. And usually we can identify them either with an equals when we have an x and a y. So what this means is if I change x, y will change with it. So this is called a relationship. So x doesn't have to be one specific number. It could be many numbers. And there's also a situation where there's no equal sign, and x can equal anything then. So example 1 is looking at is asking if it is an unknown, the x in the equation is an unknown or a variable. So for A, we can see that we have one variable, x, and we have an equal sign. Okay, so there's only one variable, there's an equal. This means that it's an unknown. Okay, so it's going to be 1, an unknown. So it's just an x standing in for a specific value that we don't really know what it is. In this case, it happens to be 7. So if I put 7 in there, I get 2 times 7 minus 4 equals 10. So that is an unknown. In B, it is a variable. Okay, because if we take a look at B, there are two variables in there. There's two x and a y and an equals. That's a good indication that it is a variable. So x can take on many different numbers, and as x changes, y will change with it. So this is a variable. In C, this is also a variable because there's no equals. That means that x doesn't have to be anything specific. So it is, in this case again, number 2. This is a variable. So we have to identify if x is an unknown, some specific unknown number, or if x is a variable where x can change and take on many values. The other thing that we have to be able to identify is when we're dealing with an expression versus an equation versus a relationship. So when in algebra, we are looking at these three different types of things. So we can have just an expression. So with an expression, there is no equals. Okay, so is just what we call an expression. It just could be something general. X can take on many numbers. And so in this case, this x happens to be a variable. So an expression has no equal sign. An equation where we can solve for x, in this case, there is this specific x that we're solving for. This happens to be an equation because we're going to actually find out what x is, and x is an unknown value, and we're going to find it. So we're going to solve for this. Okay, so this is a situation where we have an unknown, and we're going to solve. So this is an equation is when we have one x with an equals. A relation then is when we have two variables, in this case, x and y. So you're usually going to see the two variables being an x and a y, and also an equals that goes with those two. And when we have that, it's called a relationship because as we change x, y will change with it, and they're related to each other. They're connected somehow, they're related. So when two variables are connected with an equals, then we have a relationship. And when we talk about relationships, we're going to be talking about graphs as well. So relationships are things that we can graph on xy planes. So on this xy graph, we're going to see this relationship. So this one, y equals 2x plus 2, is going to look like this when we graph it, because we can put in a bunch of different x's and y's, and as they change, they're going to follow some pattern, and it's going to be a straight line in this particular case.